Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live here Friday, February 2nd, the first Friday in February. And it's time for what just happened. As we look back at the insanity of the week, we have returning champion Andrea Jones-Rooy, social scientist specializing, as always, in complexity, stand-up comedian, and circus artist who's doing this live from a loft somewhere. Hello, Andrea. How are you?
I'm good. I'm live from a loft, and I'm in New York City without any heat, so I'm my struggle is real. I think I have it hardest on the planet right now.
You just, well, keep going with the squatting. You got to do what you got to do. And
That's right.
continuing, our friend Lizz Winstead is back. You know her as a
Hi.
comedian, activist, co-creator of the Daily Show, creator of Abortion Access Front podcast, and the podcast Feminist Buzzkills, and so much more. Liz, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
And coming back, I think he was on once before. I know him for a long time. He was an intern at Saturday Night Live when I worked at Saturday Night Live. Jonathan Randall, comedian, performs nightly in New York City. He's appeared on True TV's Impractical Jokers. He was the warm-up comedian for The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and he's here now. Jonathan, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me back, Dean. Always great to see you.
Great to see you and your Jackson Pollock picture behind you. I think you've always had
No
that.
problem. Thank you.
So
I'll be bringing you your coffee just like the intern days soon.
that's very good. Yes, you have to bring it. You're going to come to the building, take the elevator up, make a right when you get out, and I'll be right there. So let's talk about, we'll get to politics, and let's start first with social media, because the head of Meta, which is Mark Zuckerberg, TikTok was there, Snap, Discord. No, that one of the people from X was there, but not Elon Musk himself. And at one point, they made Mark Zuckerberg get up and apologize. The families behind him, because some of the family members had children who had self-harm from what they've seen on Instagram or social media. And what's remarkable out of all of this, it's one of the rare areas that Democrats and Republicans sort of agree. There is no recourse for social media. You can't sue them because of the federal immunity. You can't hold them responsible in any way, nothing. And they're making billions of dollars off this. And some of it is really bad stuff that's going on. So let's start with you, Liz. I mean, you use social media. Should there be some kind of regulation?
I am unique in that.
I haven't touched it, so it's good.
You're one of those people who do the thing on the social thing. Should there be regulations of social media in terms of age restrictions, or at least a consumer bill of rights? Because I've gotten banned sometimes from social media and there's no recourse. You have no idea why. And then you have to beg, and then sometimes you get back reinstated. At least that. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know if I would, if it's harder to figure out what's going on in the Middle East or try to come up with a solution for what's going on social media, quite frankly. Because truth be told, I don't think anybody could have predicted that this private thing that you opt into would officially become the public square. It is the public square. Everyone's to say just don't be on social media anymore is a ludicrous notion.
Right.
And so foundationally, I feel like we as humanity have understood that this is part of yelling fire in a crowded corner. It feels like public. It doesn't feel private. So do we regulate it? I don't know what that means, because I know, as an abortion activist, I can't buy ads on Facebook that have the word abortion in it. They will not allow me to purchase those ads. So they're censoring me because that's political speech. But then, people walk around doing stuff that's nuts. And you get suppressed all the time. They have the right to decide whose voices get amplified and whose voices don't. And that, to me, is the part that we should tackle first and foremost. If you're going to have these platforms, how do you get to decide who says what and who doesn't? Because everybody's offended by everybody.
It's interesting.
I said nothing of interest.
No, you didn't. No, but the idea that you can't say abortion on Facebook, you have these Republicans screaming about free speech, but none of them would say, and Lizz Winstead can't say abortion on Facebook. And they're like, we should do something about that. They're like, that's fine, because she's a baby killer. So we can't have that kind of stuff. It's unbelievable. Andrea, where do you come down this whole thing on? I mean, regulation would be the same way, in a way, like right now, you can sue a newspaper for defamation, but you can't sue Meta or Instagram for defamation. And of course, there's a difference. The newspaper, they'll write an article and someone will fact check it or not fact check it, and it goes up on their platform. But there is no recourse whatsoever. And Meta just had unbelievable earnings. Yesterday it came out off the charts, billions of dollars, and there's no recourse whatsoever for anything.
There's no recourse, and I think Liz is right. It's our town square, but it's like this algorithmic nightmare town square where not only can you yell the loudest, but if you yell the loudest and you have a lot of people who say, "Oh, I want to hear more of that," the algorithm, Meta, and everyone are going to make more money the more attention they put on you. So it's the craziest stuff, the most infuriating stuff that gets amplified because they're just getting ad revenue from all of it. And so I agree that we need some kind of regulation, and I never feel more like a sympathetic to the Second Amendment people, which I'm not, but I feel like I'm like, but regulations aren't going to do anything, so why bother? Like that garbage argument. We need some kind of regulations, and there does need to be some accountability. If someone is killing themselves, am I allowed to say that? If someone is doing self-harm because of something they're seeing on Meta, Mark Zuckerberg should have to answer for that. But I'm with Liz that it's not at all obvious what the rules are, and it's absolutely there is some regulation. So I'm a circus performer, and a lot of my friends post videos of themselves performing. It's how they get gigs. It's how they make a living. And when you do circus, you don't always wear a ton of clothes. And Instagram is the first to be like, this needs to come down. But meanwhile,
Wow.
anti-vaxxer, anti-science, whatever is going everywhere. So we need a ton more transparency about what's allowed and what's not. And you need to be able to push back if you are wrongly put down. I've had friends like lose their ability to make a living because of this sort of thing. They're not doing anything illegal. They're complying. All you need is someone to flag it in the conservative whatever. You know, we need transparency, and there needs to be some, I don't even want to say democratic system, some way by which we decide what counts as free speech and what doesn't. And it's a nightmare.
If I could just finer point on that, I'm sorry, Jonathan. And that is like for us at Abortion Access Front, and I know a lot of other organizations, the anti-abortion extremists and the activists in the spaces of like, you know, the ones who wanted the Moms for Liberty and stuff like that, they have a machine in place that is constantly reporting people like me and organizations like mine who do things they hate. And so then they get enough reports, and then Facebook doesn't look into whether or not what we do. We've been taken down just because there's a machine in place that's trying to report us. So they just go, oh, that seems legit. It's like in the courts where, you know, a judge might look at a case of whether or not a 16-year-old boy should be able to live with his father. Is that cool? And not that the father's a nightmare, but, oh, precedent says it's fine. And then they don't look deeper. And that's where we're at.
Jonathan, what about you? I mean, my simple regulation is if I don't agree with it, it gets banned. I mean, I'm kind of a simple guy. And if I agree with your political opinion, we amplify it, you know, on every issue. And I could do this
Dean
in a
solves
day.
it yet again.
Give me like an hour. I can write all the regulations. Here's the view you have to have on the Middle East. Here's the view you have to have on abortion access. Each thing's like, you comply with these or you're banned. Too bad. It's Dean TikTok or something. John, what about you, Jonathan? And John, have you ever been banned? I mean, you say a lot of political stuff on social media.
I mean, I get a lot of content violations all the time, so sometimes I'll get like a week banned. It's definitely appears like on TikTok right now, my content is seriously being suppressed, where, you know, videos on other platforms will get 1 million views and they'll get less than 1,000 on TikTok. But it's crazy, you know, how these platforms are giving out content violations or silencing people, censoring people because they're saying what you're saying is harmful. Meanwhile, these platforms are harmful and nobody's doing anything about that. And it seems like the country's more determined to protect these large media companies than they are to protect its citizens, which I think is a problem that America has with everything, from when it comes to healthcare to the food that we eat.
It's big corporations, and you wonder why. You have these Democrats and Republicans at the hearing going, we actually agree something should be done. And then they leave the stage, and then the lobbyists come from these big mega corporations and fill their super PACs with money. And they're like, you know what? We can't actually find common ground. We're just going to leave it the way it is. And whatever the good regulation, I'm not sure what it's going to be, but there at least should be a consumer bill of rights, because Congressman Ro Khanna a few years ago proposed, I thought it was a great thing, to give you an understanding of if they ban you, well, here is the rules that they have to comply with. Like they can't just like whatever no discretion, like we don't like this, you're banned. And how you can get reinstated by law. Like if it's the public square, like Liz put it, there should be some way that there is a defined, it's due process really from a legal point of view, but the idea of like, okay, here I'm banned, but by law, I have 30 days to appeal. They have to give me a decision in that amount of time, or they have to reinstate me, or there can be fines if they don't do that. What about that, Liz? Like something along those lines.
Well, I just don't know, because here's the thing. The truth is these greedy, if corporations are people, then these are people that are lazy and don't have capacity to actually examine the nuance. And that is the thing. I would demand that if you're going to be a mega corporation that has this platform, that you must employ enough people that you can have, like, I would like my organization to have a personal Facebook person that I could go to, like an agent, right? So that when people, because we got taken down on TikTok, we literally showed an anti-abortion extremist who was at January 6th beating up my employee. And they didn't ban them. They took our thing down for showing violence when we were exposing the violence. So I feel like we should have our own, like, they just don't have capacity, and nor do they care. It's hard to be good at stuff. And you have to make sacrifices, and you have to expand to be good at things. And what we ultimately have to ask of these people is to commit a shit ton of money to actually have true regulatory and monitoring in place that can call balls and strikes, with enough people with capacity to do it, to really look at the nuance.
I mean,
I
there's
like
no
the idea
better
of having-
example of that than Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter/X,
yeah.
right? Where the first group that he fired was anyone doing anything with ethics and regulations and content monitoring. And then to see the power of, like, yeah, it's a town square, but there's like a guy with the reins, and it's always a guy at the top of the town square saying you get to talk and you don't get to talk. And the difference in terms of the kind of content and the accounts that are on Twitter these days, and I'm going to call it Twitter out of defiance, is...
I will dead name Twitter all day. It's the only thing I'll dead name is Twitter.
Exactly. I'm not going to let them change their driver's license in any state.
No,
it's Twitter until the end of time. But it's just one dude.
I don't like the X, formerly known as Twitter. What is it?
Nah, that makes him too cool. Yeah.
I also love the idea that Liz has, that have someone assigned to you. That, like, I would call up Facebook. I don't advertise much on Facebook, so it'll be like, wake up, Steve. Dean's finally calling. Like, hey, Steve, it's Dean. I know I spent $82 on Twitter, on Facebook this month, so I'm glad that you're assigned to me. But if you're a big account, I bet they do. I bet, like, if you're like these campaigns, DNC, RNC, spending millions, I'm sure they have someone who's assigned to them. It's us. Jonathan, would you like someone assigned to you at X, Twitter, TikTok, somewhere? Like, when you have problems, you can just call them directly up and go, hey, it's Jonathan Randall. There's a problem.
Yes, it would be nice to have some sort of contact, or, especially for larger accounts, to have somebody that you can get in touch with when, they'll take videos down, and you can appeal things, but they could take as long as they want for an appeal video before they want to put it on. You're kind of like left in the lurk.
Exactly. That's why I want a consumer bill of rights. We're left in alerts, like the U.S. Court of Appeals not deciding now for a month on Trump's immunity claim, allowing Trump. The whole system is conspiring to protect the rich terrorist named Donald Trump. That's a whole different story. Let's shift gears. I'm chatting with Andrea Jones-Rooy, Lizz Winstead, and Jonathan Randall. So here's something fun. MAGA is going after Taylor Swift, which doesn't seem like a winning fight to me, because first of all, most don't even know who Taylor Swift is, but I've never seen MAGA get this mad at a white person before. That's the kind of wrinkle in all this that I'm finding amusing. Like, do you know she's white? Like, she's not Joy Reid. This is a white woman. And they're like, oh, but I wonder, Liz, do you get a sense it's like they feel betrayed that she should be on their team, and why is she not? Or what is it in your sense? Or you do so much work with women having self-determination. Is it about that? Her success so angers MAGA that's about oppression and suppression of women.
I mean, I think it's a couple of different buckets, right? I think that it's the bucket of, oh my God, when this person speaks, people listen. So we have to tamp that down. And then they take that one step further, where it's like the conspiracy theories that Taylor Swift's part of the deep state and Biden. Then there are simply the unfuckables who are so mad that they're attracted to Taylor Swift, and that if she saw them, she would never stop swallowing vomit into her own mouth, that they have to destroy her just on a visceral incel level. And then there's the people who are all those things.
So that's those are the different buckets. Let me go to you, Jonathan. What was great is Sean Hannity, I played the clip on my show this week, literally begged Taylor Swift not to endorse Joe Biden. And the way he did, he goes, she probably thinks that we're all against abortion and we're racist and we're anti-Muslim. And that's not true. I'm like, you just summed up the GOP platform. I'm like, are you kidding?
And
Like,
your own show.
I mean, like, who has banned abortion at conception in 14 states? Republicans. This is ridiculous. So, Jonathan, what do you make of, first of all, just this brawl overall, and then Sean Hannity literally begging her, like, she's going to watch. She goes, I thought I'd like Biden. Then I watched Sean Hannity on Fox News, which I always watch. And he's like, don't endorse Joe Biden. And I had to rethink it because, and Laura Ingraham backed it up. So I got to go with that. What do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm sure she's watching Hannity every night before she goes to bed. First of all, I think the Taylor conspiracy is still more believable than there was voter fraud in the last election. But I think Taylor should run for president. She wouldn't have to sanction other countries. She could just refuse to go on tour there.
That's it. She's the guy boycotting those countries. If you don't go there, it's kind of remarkable, though. I mean, Andrea, this was covered on all the cable channels. And at some level, I was annoyed. I'm like, you're giving oxygen to some right-wing thing, but they know Taylor Swift gets eyeballs now, right? So she becomes like this thing. Are you concerned for Taylor Swift? Some of these MAGA people are dangerous. We have to really say that. And why do you think they're targeting her?
I mean, I'm a big Swiftie, so I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that I have massive bias here. I think she'll be okay. I hope she's okay. She's had bodyguards just forever. She's had crazy people after her. The MAGA January 6th crowd is a little more intense, so maybe she needs to up the ante on that. But she's also about to go to Asia, so she might as well just hang out there for a while where it's safer, unless she flies back for the Super Bowl, which
she's going to. She has to. How could she not? Because she's got to be there to rig the Super Bowl for Kansas City.
Right.
Well, obviously they're going to just show, the Eras tour instead of the game.
That's right.
That's it. Just
I don't know if you guys know that.
And all the song lyrics are anti-conservative values if you break them down. No, I honestly, as I'm watching this whole thing this week, my main thought is like there are so many problems in the world, like serious, real problems, and the Republican Party is just making up problems. Yeah. And since when is the Democratic Party that organized that we could somehow convince Taylor Swift and have the money to have her have a relationship with a football player, blah, blah, blah. Also, have you watched Travis Kelce's podcast? He's a charming dude. Like, I get it. And she's sick of musicians. The whole thing makes sense to me. And I just don't understand why they're just admitting that they don't have a real platform and that they don't actually have real problems that they care about. And so they're talking about this stuff as opposed to the fact that people can't make a living and people are dying and all this other stuff.
Sometimes I just dream of a day that Democrats would be as diabolical and organized as they think we are. Like, that is like the dream. Like, have a conviction, stick with it, go in hard. It's like hilarious to me.
Liz, what about the fact that now these MAGA people are forced to root for San Francisco 49ers, a team in one of the bluest cities in the blue state where Nancy Pelosi represents in Congress? So now MAGA has a cell phone and cheer for the 49ers against Kansas City, which is from a red state.
I mean, you're asking me to weigh in on concussion ball, and I'm not into it. I also grew up with a dad who was a bookie, and so my whole fucking life and food on the table depended on what sport ball team did what. So
your dad was a bookie? Did you just say your dad was a bookie?
My dad was a bookie.
I didn't know this. Is this in your book that I haven't read? Your dad
it is in my book that you haven't read. Yeah. He was a bookie. And it was so bookie? It's like, yes.
What did he do? People call up. Did he have to call up? There?
Okay, yes, but it was in the pre-cell phone internet days when the line would be called in on Friday night, and so I couldn't use the phone Friday night, so I could never know where my friends were. I would have to get on my bike and ride around to many parks, many parking lots to just find out where my friends were hanging out because I couldn't call anyone ever. He would come to my school because we all had keys to the trunk of the car because he was spacey, and he'd have thousands and thousands of dollars of cash in the trunk, and he would come to school if he lost his keys to get the money out to pay the guy. It was a mess.
Wow, I think I saw this in an episode of The Sopranos. Were you in The Sopranos?
No, I'm Scandinavian. It was like a whole weird thing.
This is remarkable. What a life story. You should do a one-person show about it. This is, whenever I see people now who are having a hard young life, I'm like, you're going to have a great one-person show. It doesn't make them feel better. But I'm like, you wait. This is good. You're going to have a deep
And I just derailed. The question is,
I think
you
it's
have to
very
root for
interesting.
blue state people.
Oh, but I thought this was interesting about
This is the best thing
Dad
I've learned all
being your
week.
book. I've never talked to someone. My
Maybe read my
grandfather
book,
was
Dean. I have a
involved-
book. I have a book that's
What's
interesting.
What's it called?
Liz Free or Die.
I have
Nice.
that. I know that book. Maybe I think I have. You should have said the book. My dad was a bookie. That's the name of the title. I would have read that in a second. My grandfather was involved in numbers as my Sicilian grandfather, and my mom would tell us how he would have all this money on the table and a gun next to it and load on.
Nice.
And so there wasn't any phone calls at that time. It was just people showing up to get their money or not get their money. Interesting. How about you, Andrea? Any in your family do anything that was potentially against the law? We're going to say allegedly. I'll use that term.
I'm so disappointed. The best I can offer is my grandfather was banned from the Soviet Union, and therefore my whole family was, because they were spies during the Cold War. And so I don't
That's
think you can go
big.
to Russia.
Someone's a spy in your family.
Yeah.
That's right up there with Bookie.
Yeah, it's pretty
That's
awesome.
cooler than Bookie.
I'm not
Spy?
sure.
We didn't
Always.
have trunks of money with guns or anything like that, and it was all before I was born, so I can't claim much of it.
Was he caught? Did he end up in a
Yeah.
gulag?
Yeah, and I
Oh.
don't exactly know why he wasn't just thrown into jail, but for some reason, probably the deep state, probably Taylor Swift.
They let him come here?
Washington. Yeah.
He came. Maybe he was a double agent. What do you think?
Maybe.
I don't want
Maybe,
to
I
throw
don't
it
know.
out there.
I'm actually Russian, and I'm spying right now on behalf of Putin. So
You're doing a
this is
great
all
job.
very informative. Yeah.
Very subtle. What about you,
Yeah.
Jonathan? Anyone in your family? Any illegal activity?
No, but I mean, now that we went from bookie to spy, I feel like I need my dad to be a member of the Legion of Doom or something.
You have to talk to people in your family. You got to pick up the game. Somebody in your family did something untoward. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way. I don't know whatever it is.
Oh, they definitely did, but I don't know if I want to be talking about it on your show right now.
Whichever Jonathan this is called
That's the real power
Confessions.
move. 'Cause you can't even talk
Confessions with
about it.
Jonathan Randall, Lizz Winstead, and Andrea Jones-Rooy as we confess crimes of our family. Right now, we get it all out. So let's see how much time. Okay, let's talk for a second here. Nikki Haley, who reminds us there are no good Republicans. I want people to know, not that there's any Democrats going, I'm going to give that Nikki Haley a thought. I should look. No, we're not. But even again, she does this week. She declared on the Breakfast Club that states can secede, and they can succeed too. And she's like, Texas can secede. And it harkens back to her comments 10 years ago when she was talking to, wait for it, the Sons of Confederate Veterans, that organization, telling that it's all legal to secede because the idea of, no, your ancestors did nothing illegal. This is insane, coming after her. Slavery wasn't the cause of the Civil War, which she had to backpedal on. So now she's like, oh no, states can secede. No, from a legal point of view, you can't. There's no clause in the Constitution like, let's get out of here clause. There's nothing like that. There's no escape clause. You have to amend the Constitution. The Supreme Court's already said it. You can't leave the country. What am I missing here? Is this, Jonathan, I'll start with you this time. Is this just the states' rights? I'm trying to get the vote of the sons of the Confederacy, not the daughters, just the sons, which is kind of remarkable.
I think she just doesn't know what she's talking about. Can I secede from the country if she becomes president, by the way? I don't know. She may never have lost her race. I know she likes to say, but it seems like she definitely lost her mind. I mean, she says that she plans on saving the country. That's what's on her website. How is she going to do that? By dismantling it now?
Interesting. And Andrea, if she became president and New York and California said, we're leaving, you think she'd be fine with that? Be like, oh, well, I said you could legally secede. If all the blue states are like, we're done, Haley stand, you can call it Haleyville, whatever you want, we're gone, we're going to have blue state America. Do you think she'd be like, oh, well, I did say it was legal, so you can leave with all your money?
Dean, that would require the Republican Party to do something they never do, which is acknowledge their own hypocrisy. And so that would not happen. We would all get called un-American, and we would say, yeah, we are un-American because we're out of here. And frankly, this is the only thing I've ever agreed with Nikki Haley on. I think we should all get out. I'm over it. Let's stop keeping the family together for the kids or whatever we're doing. I just build a huge wall between the red states and the blue states. Let there be 1 year of you just pick another state that you can live in and we'll support you moving. Because there's a lot of awesome people in red states that we need to get out of there, and there's a lot of weirdos near me who can go to the red states. So 1 year of a great shuffle, and then we build a wall and it's done. That's the only thing we can do now.
That's interesting. The whole reshuffling of America, we'll call it.
Yeah.
And you go, it's a political refugee. Yeah, I just got here from Oklahoma. Oh my God, come here. Let me hug you. That kind of stuff. Welcome to the free land. What about you, my friend? Liz, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that it just shows that this is a political party where all you need to do is say whatever you want with conviction, and they buy it. It is kind of astounding that, to talk. And in the same, I just have to point out that in that same Breakfast Club interview, she said that Barack Obama was the cause of divisiveness in this country. But if you are literally laying down garbage and creating a terra firma that is removing any baseline with which we can all believe, like, you are the divisive one. But to say that Barack Obama, the first Black president, was the person who was, dividing the country by allowing gay people to get married and helping, young Black men uplift them, and to, signing the Lilly Ledbetter Equal Pay Act. Who are we dividing? People who don't want equality? Because that's what she's saying every time.
Well, he was divisive because of his skin color, and he had the audacity to be Black, and that really upset a lot of them.
And then think that meant he could somehow be president of the United States. Nobody wrote that into the Constitution.
By the way, one thing she said in that interview, right in that whole thing about states seceding, she was giving more and more red meat. She said, they do in South Carolina. We said we didn't want Syrian refugees, and we did that. So there she was going back to 2015 when she was governor and said, we don't want Syrian refugees because we don't know if they're all terrorists. And Trump at the time was doing the whole Trojan horse thing. Remember that? Syrian refugees. So she's just like,
can I just say though, Dean,
meat nonstop.
I'm in Minnesota, and we have the most liberal immigration policy in the nation when it comes to refugees. And the Syrian refugees she didn't want, we brought them here, and guess what? They're thriving. So die in a fire.
Of course, they are in Minnesota. It's a little cold. It's like my friends, I would meet people in Dearborn, and they're like, we moved here from Lebanon. I'm like, it is freezing here. What's wrong with you? Yeah. Why didn't you pick a climate more similar to Lebanon? Is like, we didn't know. My cousin was here.
I moved to Michigan from Maryland, and I couldn't handle the shock. So I don't know how you do it from the Middle East.
I'm half Sicilian, half Palestinian. I am designed for the Mediterranean. I'm like Aruba. Like, I was made for Aruba all the time, nonstop Aruba. All right, we're going to take a break. We got a lot more to cover, including Elmo, 20-year anniversary of Nipplegate, if we can get to that. And, of course, Jonathan's here. We have to talk about the Middle East conflict, because Jonathan, if you go to Instagram, you will see nonstop on social media him talking about it. So we'll be right back with more of what just happened after this. Ready? Come back. And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. It is still Friday, February 2nd, continuing the conversation with Andrea Jones-Rooy, Lizz Winstead, and Jonathan Randall. So, all right, let's see what I find interesting here. This Democrats have been now saying, and on my show they call in, polls mean nothing. They're terrible. Ignore all of the polls about the election. Then a new Quinnipiac poll comes out this week, and Biden's up by 6 over Trump. They're like, you see this? The polls show we're going to win. I'm like, didn't you just tell me ignore the polls? So can we do this? Can we go ignore all the bad polls and just like the good polls? Or should we really go, the polls really mean nothing. It's all about turnout. It's going to be a close election no matter what, because we live in such a flawed nation where a man can actually attempt a coup, incite a terrorist attack, and still run for office again and not go to jail. Because of that, and Merrick Garland's failure in doing the right job on that, he can run. So it's going to be close, and we know it. So Jonathan, let's start with you. Polls, do they mean anything? Should you be happy when you see a poll that you like the results of and just ignore the bad ones, or should we be consistent?
I think it should be the opposite. I think we should be highlighting the bad ones so it'll motivate people to get off their asses and be sure to vote to make sure Trump doesn't become president again. I don't know about this false security that the Democrats want to give people, that they're above for 6 points, 1 point, whatever. It should be the opposite. We need to be driving fear into people's hearts and making them be like, you better get out there and vote because, the orange guy might be back.
It's very true. And that's a great point. And Liz, you deal with activism all the time. Do you look at polls, for example, on the issue you deal so much about abortion access, reproductive freedom? Do the polls, are they meaningful to you in terms of a public opinion shifting?
Well, the interesting part is the polls on abortion haven't changed that much. There has always been this consistent support for abortion rights. It's gone up a little. It's the politicians who told me to shut up and I was divisive and nobody wants to hear about abortion. It's not a winning issue. And I was like, I am on the ground 300 days a year talking to people, and all they say is, abortion is my number one issue. And so I give no credence when it comes to abortion. I'm like, Yeah, surprise. You know what? That you got old ass polls that say the same thing, but now you do new ones. And also, if you're going to have an issue, that's politicians don't know how to talk about anything. That's the problem. They can't even make use of polls because half the time on all these issues, it's the public driving what's happening, doing the activism, and politicians having such hubris that they actually don't talk to the people who are on the ground working with people so that they can actually become better communicators. I think polls are dumb. I don't know. I'm not a poll fan. Not a poll fan.
By the way, touching on what you just said, do you think you deal with more Democrats? Do you find Democratic elected officials often are disconnected from the grassroots on issues? Because I think the GOP base makes themselves heard and threatens Republican office holders so much that they fear their base a lot. And I have found some Democrats are great, but many seem to ignore us. And you look at the polling of our base and everyone you talk to, like, why are they doing this on whatever issue? For example, the Middle East, for example, and we'll get to that in a second. You're like, why aren't they moving on this? And I find such a disconnect often.
Yes. I mean, I feel like it's 100%. It's hubris. They are not connected with how people are thinking and what they're thinking about. And conversely, the conservatives are way young people, young conservatives like this movement because the old people are listening to them and doing what they want. The young MAGA people and the old MAGA people are very excited, and they're excited to let people move forward. If you look at the Democratic Party, they tamp down the young people with new ideas. They don't allow them into leadership. They hang on to that shit forever. And when you look at how conservatives embrace and let in the Charlie Kirks and the Ben Shapiros and all of them, they're ushering in this new vibrant group of ass strips, and we are not.
We need more ass strips. Exactly.
More ass strips.
Angela, you specialize in
Where are ass strips?
What's going on with all of this? The polls, the idea of the Democratic leaders don't listen to the base as much as they should, which I agree with 100%. It's something, and some Democrats are great and they go out and listen, but some, nope, they listen to big money. I mean, they have to run for re-election every 2 years in the House. So what do we got to do? What's going on? And
no, there's way too much old guard in both parties, but Liz is right. The Conservative Party is actually waking up to this in a way that we are not. And it's devastating because more young people are liberal and Democrats than conservative. And we have a great moment to capitalize and bring in Gen Z and the young millennials that are still out there to play a role in politics. Much bigger. We can't have just AOC and hope that she's going to make us all relevant. But I can tell you that I worked at 538, Nate Silver's political forecasting website for 2 years as a quantitative researcher. And I literally, my job for 2 years was to input all of the poll results all of the time for the Trump approval tracker. And we were forecasting one of the midterm elections as well. And I can just tell you that many polling outfits are very good and they're transparent about their methods and they're doing the best they can. They can't solve things like selection bias. The people who are answering the phone and answering poll questions are going to be extreme in one way or another. Or if they're a Trump supporter, maybe they're not speaking up or whatever. And a lot of polling outfits are terrible. So we can't just say polls are good, polls are bad. It depends on the poll. And Quinnipiac is actually really, really good. But there's a lot that I would have to call up random dudes in central whatever Florida and say, hey, your local paper published this thing. Like, how many people did you ask? Why didn't you tell anyone how many people you asked? And they're like, oh, we asked our brother and listed it as a poll. And then 10 politicians are like, see, I'm ahead. So you can't even just say some polls are good, some polls are bad. And Nate's big message, and Nate says all kinds of interesting things, but one thing I really agree with him is you have to look at all of the polls taken together. Any one individual poll is no good. It's like if you want to find out if you have a fever, one thermometer once in your life is not enough. You have to I'm not a doctor, don't listen to me, but you can't just look at one poll. And even then, you have to pay attention to the fact that there's massive selection bias, and you've just got to take that into account. Think of what it takes to answer. I could talk about this for a long time. If you get a call from a number that you don't know, are you going to answer it? No, obviously.
I made the mistake
if you do, you're
right.
crazy. And then you answer it and they say, hey, I want to know your political views. You're like, no fucking way. I'm going to hang up. And so whoever gets through all these filters and then suppose they tell you what they actually think, you've got to take that into account. And then never mind, there's algorithms that go into predictions about turnout and they're all wrong as well.
So basically what you're saying, if I'm hearing correctly, Andrea, is only lonely people are giving their opinion.
Lonely,
to
crazy people.
pollsters. Lonely, crazy, lonely, and or crazy.
Yeah.
Someone to talk to,
Right.
someone who I can't wait to vent to.
And I will say, I once got called and I was so excited and I filled it out and I am lonely and crazy. And it was a nice opportunity to vent.
I also take away from what you just said that I should be taking my temperature more often.
Yeah,
that's
I think
really
we
important
all,
because I just don't take it enough. I should do it daily.
What a terrible analogy.
No, but it stuck with me. It's sticky. You know, those analogies that stick. I'm like, you're right. If I took my temperature once a few years ago, I don't have a fever. I'm like,
but also, if you want an analogy, you could say, have you ever slept with someone and the sex was terrible? And then somebody else meets them and the sex is great and they're just in on it. So it's kind of like, is it me?
Wow.
Is it you? Is it this? Is that we didn't connect? Like, you know.
Yeah.
The question is, my other question, who shares that stuff? Because I don't know. No one ever tells me. I don't get the Yelp reviews. I need to have people. I come from a repressed world. There's no discussions of sex whatsoever. So that's the end of that. Like sex,
every row in the
talking
spreadsheet is the person you had sex with, and every column is the people who also had sex with that person.
I need Nate Silver. Nate Silver's got to do like a whole track. We're doing a tracking.
A 569.
That's right. Very good. Lizz Winstead, Andrea Jones-Rooy, and Jonathan Randall. So, Jonathan, let's talk about Jonathan is very outspoken on the Middle East conflict. And I'd rather you say your views on it than me say, but I will say this week, the city of Chicago voted, and the mayor, Brandon Johnson, broke the tie to call for a ceasefire. In the resolution, it calls for the immediate release of the Israeli hostages by Hamas. So it's what seemed to be uncontroversial, but people on the right are very angry. The Wall Street Journal editorial board, not an op-ed, editorial board had a picture of Brandon Johnson saying Chicago votes for Hamas. And Jonathan, you're dealing with that when you speak out on humanity of Palestinians, you get called a lot of names. So what can you share?
I mean, it's absolutely crazy to presume that anybody that's against the actions of genocide, are against, the flagrant human rights violations that Israel commits against the Palestinian people means that they support Hamas. And I think it's just propaganda where they're trying to shut down any criticisms of Israel. They're trying to paint all Palestinians as terrorists. They're trying to spread Islamophobia. And that's why people don't take the Wall Street Journal seriously.
I mean, as we watch this week, Israeli folks are blocking aid to go in. And I was listening to NPR right before we got on this morning, listening to Israeli activists saying, this is on them. Look what and it's just like, I really, at this point, it's like, if your baseline isn't stop bombing innocent if you can't even find that in your soul, what is wrong? What is wrong with people? It's a mess.
It's horrific. And it's something unlike we've seen before. And that's what's so heartbreaking. But Jonathan, also, I mean, you get attacked. I mean, I don't know if Michael Rappaport went after you, but he went after like Katie Halpern and others.
Sure, I know Rappaport. I mean, I used to be a fan of his acting, and still he started sharing his personal opinion and thinking that he's a stand-up comedian. But it's very unfortunate. I think it's just further evidence how what's happening is so wrong, is how they're trying to shut down anyone speaking up against it. I mean, even what we're seeing with what's going on with UNRWA, it's like allegations against 12 people, and they're stopping aid, even though they haven't been corroborated, they haven't been verified. But just allegations of 12 employees for an organization that has over 30,000, and they're stopping life-saving aid. Meanwhile, there's a genocide case on the ICJ that's saying, stop committing a genocide. It's possible you're committing a genocide. And nobody is stopping giving money. All these countries that stopped giving money to the ICJ, they are not stopping their aid to Israel. The people perpetrating the genocide. It's absolutely crazy what's going on right now.
It's a heartbreaking situation. Andrea, anything you want to chime in at all? I don't know how much you engage in this. We've talked in the past about it, but it's kind of unless there's conflicts, no one talks about the Middle East. And that's the problem. There has to be discussions at times of calm to have diplomatic solutions to lead to a just peace. And that's either a Palestinian state with an Israeli state, or a federation, or an EU scenario, or maybe one day, and that would have to be up to the people, one state, one person, one vote by national state. we're not near that, but whatever it's going to be, something's got to be done in the calm. And it's only when there's violence that people talk about it, and then everyone forgets it. And when I write articles about Palestinians in times of lulls, it gets no one shares it. Nobody cares.
Right. No one cares.
We have to care then, so we have less of this stuff.
And as someone who is as generic a white person as can be, I can be the first to speak on behalf of my people that we have no idea what is going on in the Middle East other than the conflicts that we hear about. And it's not even, paying attention to the political issues during times of peace or lulls in the conflict, where we can think about how can we do things to stave this kind of stuff off? What kind of messed up things is the US doing when no one is looking? Never mind what it is. But we don't even have an acknowledgement of, I couldn't tell you anything. I know you, Dean. I have a number of Palestinian friends. I don't know anything about Palestinian culture. I don't know anything about your traditions. I know very little about any country other than they have bombs. They don't have bombs. They're terrorists. I mean, it's Iraq, Afghanistan as well. We've just dehumanized entire swaths of humanity. And it seems silly to sit here and say all of this while people are actively getting killed. And I'm like, I wish I knew more about your cuisine, your music, whatever. But we really do have no understanding of what life is like, what traditions are like, what people's desires and dreams are. We just totally dehumanize. And to Jonathan's point, you can't say Palestinian people without someone assuming it's Hamas. And that's just the most ridiculous. I'm sitting here being like, oh, we need to be more thoughtful about our democracy. We need to be able to tell words apart. They're different words and they're different people. Like,
they're bad actors who conflate things. That's
yeah. And you cannot have support for war if you show the spoils of war. And it is America is invested in not showing the humanity of the Palestinian people, because that way we would have to try to unpack why this conflict is happening and all of the other things around it.
You also should not be able to weigh in if you can't point out where on a map these places are.
Well, you could find that, but that's fair. It's very interesting.
Most people
to see.
can. I'm sure most people streaming don't know where Palestine is.
Me and Maysoon started the Arab American Comedy Festival, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, that because we wanted to use comedy to tell our story. And it wasn't about the Palestinian story. It was just the broader Arab American story after 9/11. I mean, we started in 2003, and the work never ends. The dream endures as we continue on this fight and it just continues. So, all right,
it's a great show, by the way. I saw it at the end of last year.
Oh, you came to the show in New York, and Liz is coming to the one in San Fran, which is very nice of you.
Dean, can I just jump in and say one quick thing?
Sure.
I feel like Israel uses these false claims of terrorism, or it's trying to be counter-terrorist to shut down, Palestinian voices, to shut down Palestinian aid. It did this a couple years ago when it designated a bunch of Palestinian rights organizations as terrorist groups, even though 9 EU states said there was no evidence. American intelligence said there's no evidence, but they were able to shut down these human rights organizations just by making false accusations, because that's what it wants to do. It wants to stop all civil society in Palestine.
It's a remarkable thing, and to see it keep playing out now. But I've never been more heartened by the support of younger people, African Americans especially. It's been great. And look,
and indigenous people.
Sure. And Latino Americans who call my show. But the point is, the more people actually care, then maybe it will push the elected officials to actually be more fair when it comes to that conflict. And then that's how you get to a just peace solution. Because if you only view one side as human, then why would you push for the other side? Because they're not even human beings. So I think we're getting to the point of Palestinians there, the Christians and Muslims who live there, as being human beings. So that's a good thing. So, all right, let's talk something fun here. Elmo. Everyone likes Elmo. I mean, it's not like I really one way or the other, but he's adorable in his own way, right? So Elmo posted on Twitter. We're not calling X. Twitter. Elmo was just checking in. How is everybody doing? And it turned out people put a litany of responses of opening up, going through difficult times. Some wrote, Elmo, I just got laid off. They're not even kidding. There were some who were talking about almost self-abuse, I can't take it anymore. And you're like, wow. And at the point where Sesame Street had to post mental health resources on there, and I'm sure they were just trying to be playful, right? Elmo. But are people that desperate? Are they that lonely? Is it that much pain going on? And I'm sure there is, but they're actually sharing it on X with Elmo. So, Andrea, Maybe you can help us out.
I can. I'm a mental health professional and I can solve this. No, Dean, I don't, it was heartbreaking to read the replies, but I actually feel like it's one positive or encouraging thing that has happened this week, if not this year, because it was a chance for regular old people to say, hey, I'm really struggling, and to do so in a forum that Sesame Street, Elmo, it's nostalgic for us, a lot of us, it's playful. It wasn't like a Reddit forum where we all just list that we're feeling horrible, which is valuable as well, and depending, unless it's an incel, right? But I think that it was actually very helpful to have a place, because I think for all this stuff that we're talking about with like politicians and Biden's and Taylor Swift and the stuff that's happening, very few politicians or anyone who purports to have a solution is like, how are you doing? Right? I mean, that's what we want our politicians to be doing. No one's asking us that. I want a pollster to call me and say, how are you doing? I'd be like, just terrible. And it might have helped one another to see that other people are struggling too. And for all this talk, like the economy is actually doing better. Why do we feel so down? I mean, there's something very serious going on that we all feel so horrible. Is it social media? Is it the death and destruction? Is it, I think it's a real wake up call. And I think, I'm all for better mental health resources, better mental health support in this country, infrastructure, funding, all of that. And we need to do things so that we're not so miserable, right? It's like, I'm going to keep eating food that makes me sick. Yes, give me more antibiotics. That will help me from dying. Look at all my medical analogies today. That will help me, but also change the environment so I'm not constantly exposed to this horrible stuff. And it kind of goes back to where we started with the social media cesspools and everything else. It's not just something where we can treat. We need to get to this. And I don't have an answer, but I was glad. I want Elmo to keep asking because it's rough.
Liz, how are you doing?
I mean, terrible. We're all doing terrible.
Okay.
I mean, but I just want to point out too that this is, a lot of people were surprised, but for years, there's therapy dogs. When you talk to children, if you've been a child of trauma, they use puppets and dolls to talk about things because you know what? They're not judgmental. And even though we know as rational people that a puppet isn't its own thing and there's a person behind the puppet or whatever, like that barrier of trust is real. And it's a real tool for mental health, in mental health. And so I think it's very sweet. And I think that it's very telling that people oftentimes can find this place that they can lay their communication down. I just did a conversation with Michelle Norris, whose book came out about race recently, and she has these 6-word essays that people wrote down on their feelings about race. And she said that so much of this outpouring that she has gotten and received in these 6-word things were people who told them to her as an anonymous person rather than their family. They didn't know how to open up or be. And so I'm not saying Michelle Norris is a Muppet, but I'm just saying that, I know a lot of people were. But I'm just saying that being able to just barf out how you feel in a place that non-judgment is crucial to a path of mental health, being mentally healthy.
I don't think I'd share with Elmo. Cookie Monster I'd share with, because Cookie's special to me. He's my Jonathan. Last thing, but then I would love to get you guys to plug where people can follow you. What do you think, Jonathan? Would you open up to
it's
Elmo?
crazy that these days people can only tell you how to get to Sesame Street from a very, very dark place. I mean, we used to tickle Elmo. Now we're depressing the hell out of him. I'm just waiting for Trump's next speech when he's like, when I was president, Elmo was laughing. Now when Biden's president, Trump is crying.
Elmo's crying.
It's good. It's good to have a safe space where people can express themselves, and I'm all down with that. But I do see the irony of using social media that's depressing the hell out of people to express why you are depressed.
That's very good.
Jonathan, alternative take, Elmo's paying it forward. He gets tickled.
Elmo.
He's paying it forward.
So we should tickle him more. So Liz, if people want to find your work and where you're going and all your activism, where can they go?
You can find me at Lizz Winstead with 2 Z's across all the platforms. If you want to follow my activism, I am at Abortion Front across all the platforms. And I will be in San Francisco. Dean is there for the festival, and I'm going to be at that show. But the night before, on February 9th, is the San Francisco debut of a documentary about the work of Abortion Access Front called No One Asked You, which is part of the Indie Doc Fest in San Francisco. And if you want to find out more about that, you can go to nooneaskedyoudoc.com. And I'm sure Dean's going to come on Friday
That's great.
night.
I'm just writing this down right now. So, and Andrea, what about you?
Yeah, I think I do this every time Liz is on, but Liz's work is awesome. I get their newsletters. I follow their Instagram. Everyone get out there and follow it. They're doing amazing work. And it's the only reason I know about all the horrors being committed against me. And feeling like I'm fighting back. All right. I am on all the socials at Jones-Rooy with 2 O's. And I am a former professor at NYU, and I'm currently putting out my course, Data Science for Everyone, on YouTube. And so if you're interested in data science or want to know what it's about, especially if you think you don't have a math background or stats background or programming, I will teach you how to make sense of all that stuff, and we'll do cool stuff. So come hang out with me on YouTube at Jones-Rooy.
Great. And Jonathan?
You can find me at Jonathan Randall across all social media. This Sunday at 12 o'clock noon Eastern Standard Time, I'm doing a live on Instagram with Maoz Anon, an Israeli peace entrepreneur whose parents were killed on the October 7th attack and is still fighting for a ceasefire to end the occupation and for a free Palestine. So check that out.
Well, thank all of Jonathan, Andrea, and Liz with 2 Z's. It's great seeing all of you. And I'll see you, Liz, in San Francisco. And we'll take a break and come back with more of the show after this.